Beginning in the 1850s, Illinois' Democratic Senator Stephen A. Douglas sought to open up the vast Nebraska territory for settlement and passage of a Midwestern transcontinental railroad. This land had been passed off to the Indians because the settlers were under the impression it was unfarmable and therefore unusable. Once it became apparent that the land was indeed farmable, Douglas decided to utilize the territory for the railroad. Due to the Compromise of 1820, or the Missouri Compromise, all land north of the line of 36 degrees and 30 minutes latitude were slave-free, including the Nebraska Territory. Douglas needed the land for the railroad, but feared rebellion from the South for creating another free state. Therefore, Douglas decided to repeal the Compromise, thus opening up the Nebraska Territory to slavery. In his bill, he proposed that the Nebraska Territory be split between Kansas and Nebraska, and that in the region, the issue of slavery would be decided through popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means that the people in the countries would be able to vote on the slave question without any involvement from Congress. He hoped that popular sovereignty in the territory would avoid any trouble with the slavery issue. The bill was passed in 1854 as the Kansas-Nebraska Act with Douglas's quote on the act's behalf: "It will triumph and impart peace on the country and stability to the Union." The act was signed by President Franklin Pierce. Douglas was outraged and violence erupted, much to Douglas's dismay. This new act essentially destroyed the Whig Party and divided the Democrats. He had hoped that political peace would come from his act, because the question of slavery's expansion would not come from the federal lawmakers but from the people themselves. Instead, Douglas was burned in effigy across the North, as pro-slavery Southern settlers flooded over the parallel to vote, and the chaos that would become known as Bleeding Kansas began. It consisted of a series of border wars, where anti-slavery and pro-slavery settlers battled each other out. The issue divided the nation as Abraham Lincoln rose up speaking against the act. He felt it was the job of the federal government to regulate the federal territories, not the people. Lincoln and Douglas began to see each other as political rivals, as Lincoln spoke against the act and Douglas spoke in support of it. In early 1854, the first Republican Party meeting took place in Ripon, Wisconsin. As Lincoln's popularity grew, a convention of former Whigs, former Democrats, former Know-Nothings, and Free Soilers had a convention on May 29, 1854. The liberal anti-slavery party became known as the Republicans and had its first organized convention in Pittsburgh on February 22, 1856. Which was the front-runner for the Philadelphia Convention, in which the birth of the Republican Party was announced as a unified political force.